Hello, everybody, and welcome back to the Sloppy Lab. This is Bottom of Beaker, the weekly show about the design, ducks, and strategy of Keyforge, everybody's, and I mean everybody's, favorite unique deck game. I'm JT Russell, and my co host tonight is a man who's already in his final form, no upgrades required. I am, of course, talking about Quick Draw version 3457. How we doing, Quick Draw, this evening?
I was doing pretty well until you told me that I had peaked in a very passive aggressive way. So thank you for that.
You know, backhanded compliments are free. What can I say? Well, we, we may have peaked, but our guest in the lab certainly has I don't know, many more valid contributions to make to the game and the world. Who do we have with us this evening? Quick draw.
We are welcoming back to the show for his second appearance the wonderful, intelligent, lovely, thoughtful Ketzer. Thank you, Ketzer, for coming back.
Hey y'all, thanks for having me. Hope everybody's
We had
doing
a
okay
blast
tonight.
last time you came here. You came here to talk about Pester Grove last time, if I'm not mistaken.
It was a
Yeah,
Is that right?
I think
it was a
it was
fighty
a pester
episode.
group, but fighting in general and kind of what its role in the game is. And I think there's some similar themes in this one tonight, actually. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And among the attributes that we could attribute to Ketzer, we should not be missing artistic as well. And I'm enjoying some of the art behind you, some of it Keyforge theme as well. Uh, Matt, quick draw. Can you tell me what the blue red uh, artwork there is? Putting you on the spot.
Yeah, this is, I believe you showed this to us last time, and that is the tide
Did
being
you
high
show
and
this to
low,
us
if I'm
last
not
time?
mistaken.
I might have.
Oh
I don't
man.
I
remember.
remember it. I've seen it before.
I've seen it on you've shared many of your art pours. This is a pour, am I right? I'm so illiterate when it comes to these things. Yes,
Yeah,
I'm calling it the right
yeah,
thing.
yeah.
Yeah, you showed a bunch of these and all the house ones too that you've done, which were awesome, which was super cool. Like if you ever do make prints available, like I would pick up a set, like for sure. And I'm looking at the Star Alliance one above it too, right? Is it? Yeah.
Yeah, I reckoned since Starlines kind of has a monopoly on upgrades, it was a it was a fitting house to feature up in the corner there.
Awesome.
Totally agree.
So we've got
Yes,
DT and Star Alliance represented. We're in good company.
that's
Oh yeah,
right.
Awesome. Well, we talked about fighting last time, and I do agree that that dovetails very well into our topic this evening. This evening, we were excited to chat about upgrades and Voltrons, and yeah, had to see if you'd be able to come on and chat with us again because this is right up your alley. Absolutely. So we're super excited for the conversation this evening. Yeah.
yeah. Luckily, I'm free tonight, not teaching a class or anything, so
Teaching a
ready to
class
get
on
into it.
upgrades.
Yeah, teaching a different class tonight.
Yeah. Awesome. Cool. Well, a good place to start on the discussion you had thought, and I totally agree. Is kind of the you know way they've been designed, some kind of advantages, the disadvantages. Why don't you tee us up for us? Where do you want to go to begin with? Yeah. What are your thoughts, kind of broadly getting going here?
Right. So kind of like rolling off of the fighting episode from last time. Fighting and upgrades are kind of two of those things in Keyforge that when you think about winning, you don't really think about those. Uh, you don't really see a lot of competitive decks that are super focused on either of those things. If they are, they're kind of like a niche strategy. Um, and that's kind of where they tie together. They're both a lot more board based, a lot more board reliant, and in a lot of Archon settings, what wins games is consistent, immediate play action and not giving your opponent any chance to interrupt you by not letting you ready those creatures that you need to use your upgrades or, set up your combos, your Voltrons, that sort of thing. Um, Inherently, the upgrades do have some drawbacks in that you typically have to have a creature to play on them. There's the new upgrade in Geistoid that you can play on an upgrade or on an artifact. So
Mm-hmm.
we're seeing that design space kind of widen out a little bit. But generally, you need either one of your own creatures or one of your enemy creatures. And depending on what you're trying to do with that upgrade in the long run, uh, if your options are only yours or your opponent's, it might not be a card that you want to play. You might not want to put um, a ghost form on your opponent's hunting witch or something if that's the only creature out in play. And then so you run into the situation where you're just kind of discarding cards. Uh, they also, a lot of them, when you need a creature ready to use them, if it's an upgrade that grants a reap effect or something like that, then you have to have a ready creature, and that can also be very slow and easy to interrupt. So there are a lot of drawbacks, but I think the way that they've designed them with drawbacks allows them to get into a space where they can give them things like certain recursion in Star Alliance and stuff like that. Things like um, Light of the Archons that multiplies by the amount of upgrades that you have.
Hmm.
I think things like that you can get away with upgrades because they are less common, they're less overall impactful.
Mm. And sort of this like by their nature being a little bit slower, you can maybe push them a little bit in different directions, right? Or in different directions, you can push them a little bit stronger, right? Universal Translator comes with a nugget, comes with a pip. Um, the fact that the ability that it grants the creature is quite potent, right?
Mm.
Uh, I don't know. You might not. Although I guess I don't know if I can say that anymore in the with Grim Reminders. But I'll say like, yeah, creature that's on play lets you use another dude is pretty strong. We have that too now, but the Universal Translator coming with a nugget is also quite potent. Um, but yeah, I think the inherent drawback of needing sort of a warm body to host the ability or to grant you the full effect or to allow you to realize the full effect of the card is a real drawback that most of these will have. So that's definitely worth mentioning for sure. And yeah, it dives it into connects it with fighting in the sense that these are both ways of interacting that often require you to pass a turn and then start a turn with things ready and able to be used to kind of take full advantage. Sure, sure.
Yeah, so we'll start, I think, talking more about like the design space of it, and I know JT has some thoughts about some parallels with this in Magic the Gathering with enchantments.
Mm.
Something we could kind of dig into a little bit too. But another few things you were hinting at, Ketzer, as well, is like the need to have a board ready, being board reliant limits these cards quite a bit. We can talk a bit more about like what's too many, what's not enough. And then also, I think it's interesting to kind of explore some of the other cards that want more upgrades as well. And so, like, kind of talking about what cards want upgrades, what cards synergize with upgrades. So a lot to talk about. There's a lot of meat on the bone tonight, so to speak.
Mm.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Right.
Well, cool. So, well, where should we start? Where should we go? Where should we go from here? I don't know. How many? Let's define what we mean by Voltron because that's the other thing that goes hand in hand with upgrades, right? So we wanted to talk about Voltrons. We're going to ask ourselves whether this is a viable strategy. Probably worth getting down from the offset what we mean by Voltron when we say it. Um, I have some
Yeah.
thoughts. You all have thoughts. I'll give you all a chance before I put my bad ideas in the mix.
Go ahead, Ketzer. You can start us off. I have a couple thoughts, but I want to hear where you start too.
So I think it's kind of a loose, vague definition. Generally, a bunch of upgrades on a creature, but really, how many like is a bunch? If you're trying to do something like a Yuri in the Circumspect with Light of the Archons to boost its defense rating, its armor, then you're just trying to really stack on as many as you can. You're trying to like get it as beefed up as you can. But there's also things like just putting a ghost form on something like a Brightozark or Chronophage. No, that's not really viable, but putting one or two upgrades that are going to make your creature a lot stickier, a lot harder to deal with, and just kind of letting it sit out there and reap the static effect over a long period of time. That can also be a Voltron deck. Um, sometimes And like it also kind of depends on what you're trying to do with your Voltron. There's sometimes you're trying to protect a creature. Sometimes you're going for a big money combo, like using Hayden Oswin, or like I said with the Yuri and the Circumspect. But sometimes you're also using it as like board control. So if you put uh, an Explo Rover to give a large creature skirmish, and then you give it like a couple of stunners so they can pew pew stun things down. And every turn, you're using this to bash down your opponent's board, make it so that they can't get anything ready to put up kind of a counteroffensive. Um, then you're kind of putting board control into one creature as well.
Mm. So you started, I think, where a lot of us originally think as well is like a Voltron being like as many upgrades as you can, making one like powerhouse ultra creature, right? But you also started to, when you dig into it a bit, I think we're also talking about very powerful one creature, one upgrade combos like the Ghost Form Bryozoarch, or other ways to protect Chronophage, which is one of my favorite things to do. But you gave some other examples as well, like in the notes as we were kind of preparing for tonight, some that I hadn't even thought of, like friendship on Chosen One, for example, like trying to
Mm.
keep Chosen One alive as long as possible. And so I think for the purpose of this discussion, I'd love it if we talk not just about like the Ori and the Circumspect with 6 upgrades on it, but also talking about, these more specific combos that revolve around upgrades that we like to look at too.
Shoulder it and static charge.
Very cool one. Yeah.
Yeah, totally. I think kind of broadening it, right? We could say you're getting to a point where you've got a creature that's like now both really sticky and providing lots of value on its own. Like maybe even to a point where you're like, this is the like decisive edge that I'm trying to build based off of this thing I'm building up, whether that's one upgrade or four, right? And that's kind of when you're getting into Voltron territory. You're like, yes, I've like invested more resources into this one thing on board, and now it's hard to deal with and providing lots of value. And if you're kind of doing that far enough, where I mean, so now you're in Voltron territory, at least in my book, how I'm kind of like looking at it for our discussion. And if your deck is like using that as a primary path to victory, like that's cool. Now we can talk about this as being like a Voltron quote unquote deck too. Yeah, I dig it. I dig it. Yeah. Sorry, I cut you
So
off.
design wise, like we started talking about potentially, needing a board. And so there's certainly a point where like I've played a lot of games, I'm sure many people have, especially with Worlds Collide and Dark Tidings, where your house, your Star Alliance house typically, has so many upgrades, and then your opponent just wipes the board and your hand is basically useless, right? Like that's going to happen. And so, like, I guess a few questions just to kind of kick us off. Like, what is too many as far as upgrade counts go? Like, is there a certain cutoff that you guys think is like beyond effective? Too many in a single house? Too many across an entire deck? Anything like that?
So where I'm comfortable with, I guess, and it depends. You can look at your ratio as compared to a few different things. So a creature to upgrade kind of ratio. I wouldn't want anything too high. I think going past one upgrade for every two creatures is starting to push it a little bit, because you're more often running into situations where you just don't have the creature to put an upgrade onto. If the few that you can get out there stick, especially if the upgrades are kind of helping them stay out there, then you can get like a few creatures that are like really beefed up, but you're still kind of consolidating everything to a small board, because you just don't have as many creatures. Um, when looking at like a house, usually like 3 to 4 cards for on average for a house is pretty high. If it is something like Star Alliance that you're getting more benefit out of the upgrades, um, it can be worth it to push that a little bit, especially if it's something like you have a chief engineer walls or something where you can pull those back and recur those. Um, and as far as like decks go, there's not really a lot of decks out there that get above 6. So like a sixth of your deck being upgrades, I think is pretty good.
Hmm.
Um, and again, it depends on kind of like what each house role is too. If you have a lot of like sanctum creatures that are fine sticking out on the board, you play like 8 or 9 of them in a house. It might be okay if your Star Alliance is like 5 or 6 upgrades with very few creatures, um, because you can kind of bounce into that, play all those out, and get a bunch of amber for it if those have upgrade or have amber pips on them, um, and then kind of bounce back in to Sanctum with a more beefed up turn. And
Well, I'm
yeah,
looking at Granite here with 10 upgrades. Like that's got to be a far outlier. Like, are there many decks with 10 upgrades in them? That's got to be like
there's not a lot.
there's not a lot, right? Like, oh man, I'm sorry. I'll cut out the dead air, but I have to do a search now and see how many decks have 10 upgrades. Upgrade count of
You're
10.
not going to cut out the
Well,
dead air.
Yeah,
and then
it's
so
Not
I
just
think
there.
that deck has 17 creatures, and I usually think of it as having 16 creatures and 11 upgrades because I think about the Explore Rover usually more as an upgrade. But that's where I've heard the design team
mhm,
talk before about when they made Star Alliance, they knew they wanted to put a ton of upgrades in it, and they knew that people would get those bricky hands with a bunch of upgrades. So those
Hmm.
robots that can be played as a creature or an upgrade were a way to kind of give you the best of both worlds. So you still have things that can, stack onto your Hayden Oswin or your Commander Drixcar. You can bounce them back if they're enhanced and replay them. But if you also get stuck with those and no other upgrades, you can play it as a creature to take on those upgrades. And I've had that a few times. There's the other deck, Janessa. Um, you can get into a point where you're playing a lot of upgrades and then bouncing them back to your hand.
mhm,
And if you've got something like a away team, you can play those upgrades onto the away team. When your away team gets taken away, those will get archived, and you may not have a creature to play them back onto. But if one of those archived cards was a creature upgrade,
yep,
then you have a creature along with all the upgrades that you can kind of stack them onto. So
Hmm.
there's like little bits of flexibility like that upgrades have a unique position on being able to fill out just because of the way that they interact with the game.
Yeah. You'd mentioned that like a 2-to-1 ratio of creatures to upgrades is like the max that you want. If
Mm.
you have any more upgrades than that, it feels pretty clunky, right? Like I had a deck, obviously Worlds Collide, Star Alliance, um, and the Star Alliance house in this deck had 5 upgrades and 7 creatures. And I had many times where I played that where all I could do in a Star Alliance turn was either give my opponent a good upgrade for a pip, or just discard them, or probably just call a different house. But like the deck really got in its own way in that regard because it had those dead turns where it's like I could take a bad turn of playing like a single card from one house and hope that creature survives to the next turn. It doesn't.
mhm.
Or I can
Mm.
just go Star Alliance, move some cards, and just try to like get a new hand, even though I'm not getting any value from it.
Right.
Interesting.
And speaking to how clunky they can be, there's another deck that I shared with y'all that has all of its amber control invested into upgrades. So just like the Observe You Maxes and
Yep.
the Untamed one.
Wild
Can't
Spirit.
remember what it's called. Wild Spirit.
My
Yeah, yeah.
my brain instantly went to adaptive for that. Like understanding your deck's strengths and weaknesses in adaptive is so important. And knowing that the deck that you're bringing in, like, sure, maybe it has like a 5 or a 6 amber control rating, but you recognize that all of that comes from the upgrades, and maybe they all have to have ready creatures. And so, like, those kind of things, like, my brain instantly goes to, like, okay, how can I take advantage of that knowledge in a game of adaptive or something like that?
Right, right. There's places for it. When we think about like competitive viability for upgrades, Archon is really kind of where they fall short. But I think the deeper thinking involved with how flexible they can be, where you're playing them, um, and just the idea that if you say have 12 creatures in a deck, you have 4 different upgrades. You essentially have 48 different creatures because each of those upgrades modifies each of those creatures in a way that makes it more unique and more able to handle different situations. Maybe
Hmm.
not drastically, maybe it's just giving skirmish or something, but you put skirmish on a gray rider and that completely changes how that gray rider can function, you know.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Yeah, I love that too. folks appreciate in the chat. I have to admit too that this is exactly where my brain went when we asked ourselves, kind of in notes preparing to talk tonight, like, oh, Voltron's cool. It's kind of niche. Is it a viable competitive strategy? Um, and I think the answer, right, is like a resounding yes, probably for adaptive. Resounding yes for adaptive. Whether or not it's,
Or
you know,
potentially sealed.
or sealed. I mean, I've had some success in Archon settings, probably less so with Archon solo or going to a Vault Tour or some highly competitive kind of tier, and like I'm really just looking for my best chances to win per se. But you know, if you've got a pick one of N decks and you can do some matchup crafting, you can really do some work with them too, for sure. I think. But but I think there's a lot of room for strategies like this to shine in adaptive, absolutely. Because often what you're doing when you say, "Hey, uh, I've got this sub game that we're going to play. It's about building up the Voltron, or the assembling this like thing on board that's going to be really tough to deal with, and I'm going to try and do it. You're going to try and stop me from doing it, and we're going to kind of play the sub game. If you realize we're playing the sub game, you can stop me. If you kind of understand what's going on and how things are working, but if not, then you're probably going to lose some value. And so that's kind of interesting to me, in that the like, hey, I brought a Voltron deck is asking your opponent to think in different ways than they're used to thinking, in just kind of a traditional like arc battle setting that you might for like a vanilla game of Keyforge.
Yeah, and I think that's kind of core to playing more board-based decks. Is you're really planning out and you're taking risks by playing to the board in order to get a bigger investment return over time. I don't know the business words super well, but it's the idea that you're investing to get like an overtime effect. That's why you have stuff like uh, you go the difference between a card that has the same effect as a creature, but the creature does it on reap and the card does it on play. Um, and some of those are kind of like you can see those in upgrades too. I'm failing to think of an example right off the top of my head. Um, oh, so uh, shoot, Wild Wormhole and Reckless Experimentation.
Mm-hmm.
That's the one, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
Yeah,
Yep.
yeah.
Reckless experimentation.
So
Play the one off the top on Reap, just on Reap, or Fight Reap. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Just read.
Just Reap.
yeah, so it's very similar, a very similar card, but one of them you're getting a pip, you're getting your instant play, and the other one you're either putting it on a creature that's ready and using it immediately without the amber pip, you're getting the reap instead, or you're putting it on a creature that you can hope does it again later. But if that creature survives, you use it another time, and then another time, and another time. Or if you have anything that readies a creature to be reused, so you can like, rule of six it, for example,
Mm-hmm.
then you can get more repeated value out of that.
Mm.
So you're really trying to shoot for the long term value of things. If anybody's ever run into a game with like runaway board state, where you just cannot deal with the overwhelming presence of everything going on that your opponent has, I think that's kind of what you're shooting for with
Mm.
those kinds of
Yeah.
decks.
Yeah. And when you talk about like the repeatability of something like Reckless Experimentation, one of my favorite combos in a deck is Bilge Warden, Binary Moray, and Reckless Experimentation, where you actually have the ability to use Reckless Experimentation's ability 3 times the turn you play it, if you're set up right. And understanding how to like set up that play, or if you're the opponent, understanding the potential for that and disrupting that, can take away a lot of value, uh, or add a lot depending on your perspective.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
And having like one or two of these like very obvious ones, like we were talking about Static Charge and Shoulder Id. If you see that on your opponent's deck list, they play the Shoulder Id, you kill it before it can get the Static Charge, and then you don't have to worry about it. But if you've got like a decent variety of upgrades and you can kind of spread that threat out, even if it's a bunch of small threats spread out here and there, That demands multiple responses from your opponent oftentimes. Like they have to keep answering those things, or just kind of let them work over time. Which, again, when we look at something like Archon, you can definitely bring those kinds of answers. Uh, so it's a little bit less viable. But when you kind of think about these decks and you know what to look for in something like Sealed, or when you're using it to test your opponent's adaptability in Adaptive, or if you're playing something like Triad and Hexad, where you can kind of more look at the matchups and see what answers your opponent does or doesn't have, what their decks are trying to do, and how that kind of matches up to your strategy.
Mm.
I think those are all, different areas of viability for more upgrade focused decks. And then I think you can have some Archon decks as well that could really pull those off and kind of bring that as a maybe not the only facet of what that deck's doing, but certainly like a large facet.
As an option that you can take advantage of in the right matchup or the right setting, for sure. Um, I know I'm showing on screen right now a deck that I've probably played a number of times with you, Quick Draw. Maybe you talked about when we were talking fighting last time, Ketzer, as well. G Nordheim du Vestibule. Uh, either of you want to take a swag at pronouncing the
No,
name?
you did good enough. I don't need to correct
Du
anything
Chahu?
there.
French, I
Ketsu,
think.
do you speak French? Yeah, it's
No.
French.
Well,
It's French. Okay.
where's Murph when we need him? I don't know. But a double Z Force deck, so already getting lots of upgrades just coming in from those. But this deck really wants to fight, gets lots of value from fighting. Can go a quote unquote Voltron route by tossing, Light of the Archons and a ton of other upgrades onto a Mookling that makes for some very expensive keys, but is also just super happy to throw random upgrades on, the One-Eyed Willas or, a Z-Force agent or one of the other many creatures that want to get in there and fight and just kind of get those amber pips, get extra fight value. Uh, and so kind of has like these two different directions it can go in. And if you see that your opponent has a really tough time dealing with one really tall, big creature, then you go tall and you make that tower as you're describing, Ketzer, when we were talking before the show. And if not, then you spread them wide and you kind of get your value incrementally in a bunch of different ways. So yeah, I don't know. I'm finding myself really drawn to sort of these decks that have options that it can different lines that it can go on depending on where some of the weaknesses are in the opposing lineups. And this one will really punish decks that are relying on damage, say, as a way to deal with opposing threats. Like if you're just bringing damage, or you've got just an implosion, I can throw the ward granting upgrade on a dude, and all of a sudden it's very hard for you to deal with a big old Mookling with lots of upgrades on it, or a Z-Force with lots of upgrades on it, or even a Willow with lots of upgrades on it. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so let me just ask you, like, real quick. This deck that you're referring to is double Z-Force Agent. It has 7 upgrades in Star Alliance and 3 creatures in Star Alliance. How often are you just taking a dead turn in Star Alliance with that?
Ooh, it hasn't happened to me a ton, but it does happen. So I would say, anecdotally, I can remember 2 or 3 times, and it's usually the first turn of the game where you're like, wow, I mulliganed into a triple upgrade hand, and there's no creature to play, or I have to take a bad turn to throw at a creature and get back into a position where I can start playing upgrades. And sometimes
Yeah.
you're like, well, just gonna discard a bunch of upgrades and find some new cards so I can cycle. Yeah, so it happens. It does
Hmm.
happen. Yeah, in this deck, 8 upgrades in total, only 14 creatures, so it's kind of below that threshold that we were talking about, the 2-to-1 threshold, um, or
There might
above.
be a there might also be a certain degree in which you have to kind of plan for that and expect it, and then kind of craft your turns around that. So if you know getting too many Star Alliance cards in your hand is going to end up with a handful of upgrades, you might need to take a turn kind of inefficiently earlier to play out like 2 or 3 of them while you have the creatures to play them onto. And if you can position yourself right, you can use those. Often they have amber pips. You can kind of use those amber pips to push yourself into check and demand kind of a response on two fronts, where they're responding to the board you're setting up, but also responding to you going on to check.
Yeah, and having that awareness too is critical for making your mulligan decisions, right? If you open a hand and you're like, well, this isn't ideal, but I've got two creatures, maybe I keep it and roll with it instead of digging for the going to 5 and hopefully getting I don't know the Z Force or what have you, or the old Patty, and trying to get some decks you're going to want a mulligan for that beautiful first turn opener. Other decks you're like, no, there are creatures here. I need to establish a board, put some creatures out, and then that's what I need to really build on, as opposed to looking for my one heavy opener. Yeah.
Yeah.
Z-Force is a
So
good example of a card too, because it always comes with the 3 upgrades, and there's always that tendency, that temptation, or you want to put all of them on the Z-Force. It comes as a package. It's like all in the name. But oftentimes trying to angle towards that is going to kind of hold you back when kind of looking at it more as a creature who just brings upgrades for friends. You can spread those out a little bit more, be a little bit more generous with it, and you can get a bit more flexibility and some more clever plays out of it than just trying every game to fully stack up the Z Force Voltron.
mhm. I want to ask you guys. So, talking about not upgrade cards, but upgrade synergistic cards, and one of the first ones that I think of is Matter Maker, which allows you to
Ooh.
play your upgrades off house. Very useful for a deck like that if you had one. But other things like you mentioned earlier, Ketzer, Chief Engineer Walls, able to get them back. Um, Armory Officer Nell, letting you draw a card each time you play an upgrade.
Mm-hmm.
Transporter Platform to let you replay them is a very popular Voltron card from Worlds Collide and a few other sets. Um, what do you guys think about those kind of cards? Like when you have a Matter Maker, how many upgrades you looking for? When you have a Transporter Platform, how many upgrades you looking for? You guys have any thoughts on those or any others?
Uh, I'm a little bit unhinged, so I say as many as possible, as much as the algorithm will let me get away with. Uh, but yeah, there could be definitely a number there. If somebody's a bit better with math and ratios and stuff, could kind of figure that out. But I do think that having any of those kinds of cards definitely, it increases the amount of things that you can do with your upgrades and increases the value that you get out of having them. Transporter Platform's a pretty huge one. The fact that it is uncommon is fantastic. Um, I wish Matter Maker was uncommon, or that there was something similar to that.
Yeah, I was going to say the same thing too.
Mm-hmm.
And I feel like that's something that they could bake into upgrades going forward. I don't think it's unrealistic to have an upgrade that you could play on any turn, you know, depending on what the upgrade does. But if it's something like some of the older Untamed upgrades that just give skirmish or elusive, way of the porcupine, way of the bear, that kind of thing. I don't think at the level that the game's going now, I don't think it would be totally broken if a set without Star Alliance just let you play those on any turn.
Hmm. Yeah, kind of similar to the some of the spoilers we've seen for Ember Skies, which enhance other cards in your deck with a second house to let them be played
Mm.
in one of a few different houses. Something similar with upgrades. Maybe there's a way to just say this upgrade can be played as if it belonged to any house, or maybe it belongs to either of these houses. Definitely some design space there, I would say. Yeah.
Mm. Yeah, I don't think I'm happy or unhappy to see as many upgrades as I can get when there's a Matter Maker, uh, or a Nell
Mm.
kind of in effect, especially with Nell, if they're upgrades that can also be creatures. Awesome. Um,
Yeah.
Transporter Platform, I'm okay with seeing fewer. As long as I've got at least a couple in Star Alliance, preferably, that have pips on them, I'm feeling pretty good, especially if there's a creature with a play effect to go along with it. But yeah, I mean, hey, if we can throw a Quixel Stone in the mix too, I'll take it.
Yeah. There's not a ton of cards that like really have synergies with upgrades? Like, what other ones stick out to you guys besides those ones?
Mm.
Really, not a whole lot that specifically have synergies or enable upgrades. There's stuff like phase shift, stuff that lets you play off turn, that isn't Star Alliance, and those things can get you. Say you're on like a Logos turn, you want to use your upgrade from another house, like a Dusk Runner. You can phase shift it onto one of your Logos creatures, and then kind of get that ready to go and ready to use. That offers flexibility, but as far as the designs that they've given, there's not anything like Hayden Oswin, um, or Dirk Scar transporter platform. Um, in the newest set, you get some in Mars. There is a Mars creature. I think it's a Mars creature. Lets you play
Hmm.
an upgrade from your discard pile onto it when you play
That's
it.
a Star Alliance, actually. Elliot.
Oh, it is Elliot. You're right. You're right. I'm thinking of the one that archives an upgrade when you play it.
Yeah, I think you're thinking of Yip Yaks.
Yeah, yeah.
Yes. If
Still
I
kind of learning
can,
Grim Reminders.
if I can figure out how to spell it, I'll pull it up to read.
It's also difficult to spell Elliot because there's some numbers and letters mixed in together there. But
Yeah.
Elliot is the creature you're referring to that when you play it, you can play an upgrade from your discard pile, or I believe it's scrap to shuffle all upgrades in play into their owner's deck. And then the other one was Yip Yaks, the Abductor, Mars creature that when you play it, maybe also if you reap with it, you can archive and upgrade from play and put it into your archives, right?
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I was getting the two of those confused, mixed up.
Yeah. But Yip Yaks kind of provides like what I like to refer to as upgrade control because there's not a ton of upgrade control in the game. You think about like your opponents are trying to do like some big combo with the Voltron. Maybe they have a Ghost Form and a Brio. Like, how do you handle that if you don't have like a Nature's Call or a way to bounce the creature? And upgrade control is one way to do that. Like Wipe Clear is a Saurian action from Dark Tidings that destroys all the upgrades in play. You have Yip Yaks who can archive it and get rid of a little bit of their Voltron, a few others as well. But you don't see a ton of those just because I think, you know, design wise, upgrades aren't super strong to begin with for a lot of the reasons that you already mentioned. That
Mhm.
having cards that counter them feels like, kicking them while they're down.
A little narrow, perhaps. Yeah. I mean, I do think Walls got a ton better in Grim Reminders, due in large part to the number of robots going up to.
Hmm.
Um,
Yeah,
but
I was gonna say, I think people are probably more often pulling back body than an upgrade
yeah, you're getting a body or
or
a
the play
snippy or
capture
something
too.
like that. Yeah, yeah.
I refer to
Though,
him as Quartermaster Booty in my locals. It's much more fun to refer to him as the booty as opposed to the body.
well, I like the big boot body. I don't know. Cannot lie. Is that how it goes? Yeah.
Don't pretend like you don't know.
Yeah. I'm not gonna pretend. But I mean, also just because discard piles are beefier, um, larger generally with Grim Reminders. Walls is getting more value. Exoskeleton's really cool, especially when they're coming back enhanced. Some really good
First
times.
one I got had a pit, and
Mm.
that's a fun deck to play on.
Yeah,
I haven't played enough Grim Reminders that have a lot going on for the upgrades, um, so I haven't really been able to explore what it fully has in terms of like the transporter platform that we see in multiple other sets.
I've not I've not found a deck in Grim Reminders yet that I would have called like a true Voltron uh, deck. I wouldn't give it like the Voltron branding, but I did open one triple exoskeleton deck with Commander Durger. How do you
Dirk
say
Dirk
Scar.
Scar?
Dirkscar?
It rhymes with
Yeah,
like Ramirez or something.
yeah, and an Elliot. So there's lots of upgrade recursion, playing upgrades for value shenanigans going on. Pretty cool for burst, but less of like, hey, I'm going to build up this one creature and then ride it to the finish line sort of situation. It was more of like a one-time burst, kind of like you'd see with like playing a bunch of upgrades for pips in previous sets, but not necessarily building up a really like high value creature. Um, But yeah, I mean, to your question, quick draw, I don't think that see we don't see too many cards that are like, hey, go do some upgrade things. I do see a lot of cards that uh, interact with the abilities granted by specific upgrades very favorably, right? Like we talked about automatons being great places for upgrades that provide static value, right? So this is kind of like your already sticky creature. Um, if I can layer on effects that let it provide value for just being there, that's pretty cool. Like your Calipigian ideal, Calipigian.
Calipigeon, yeah.
Well, it's on the body, whatever it is.
There you go.
Yeah, I got there. Okay.
There you go. Go look up Calipigeon if you
Yes.
haven't.
So that's great. Or the steel stopping upgrade, getting on, yeah. Or I mean, really, any upgrades you want to slap on these super sticky creatures is good times. Um,
One of
uh,
my first Winds of Exchange experiences at my locals, a guy opened and sealed. It was the big Martian robot, not Elixion,
mm-hmm.
with a mirror shell, and was able to get the not Elixion out early, got the mirror shell on it, and then the entire game was it was so difficult to deal with that, because the mirror shell just turns all of the creatures into the not Elixion, and then so the other Martian pilot can ward those, and then they go back to being what they were, and they have the wards still.
Wow.
They're also all usable as like a huge creature with lots of armor power. Um, so that's like a good example of how just one upgrade on the right creature can kind of give you such an extreme advantage in certain matchups.
That's a cool one. I didn't think of that one.
Mirror shell.
Um,
It, Mirror Shell in particular, I think there's a whole episode we could do on like unique uses for upgrades. But Mirror Shell in particular has some like weird ways to bust it open.
yeah, and I think the TCO devs probably already know this because that is a very weird card to use on TCO with a lot of the bugs. It'll just like flip over your tokens and show your opponent like what's underneath it. It's just a very weird, like a weird mechanic and how it interacts with tokens. Like when you're playing in real life, it makes sense, but then like you think about technically trying to implement that in code, it gets really funky.
Something I really want to pull off in Winds of Exchange. It never happened. Um, get a Mirror Shell on a Kretchy, and then multiply that Kretchy by a whole bunch, and then drop even just one of the uh, uh,
Fresh
what's the
marks.
one? Brush marks. Yes.
Yep.
Uh,
Oof,
so
brutal, brutal.
That's crazy.
get that
Yeah.
exponential value. There's a Saurian creature that like every time a creature is exalted, you make a token creature too. So you could kind of combo off with that and do some ridiculous things.
Hmm.
Nice.
That's very cool. Um, so let's go back to Grim Riders for 1 second, because you had mentioned the modular exoskeleton, which is an
Mm.
upgrade that says this creature gets +4 power. At the beginning of your turn, you may return modular exoskeleton from your discard pile to your hand.
Mm-hmm.
And also, alongside, I want to mention the Singing Scythe, which says while you're haunted, you
Yep.
may return Singing Scythe from your discard pile to your hand. And it does something else too. But for the purpose of this discussion, I'm kind of wondering, like, what do you guys think about these means of trying to make the upgrades more playable? Like okay, like these are going to be in your discard pile eventually, but in order for you, like us to actually give value for these, they're adding the design element of like you can take it back into your hand during your turn, even if it's in your discard pile. Like, how do you guys feel about that?
I think that's a great way to go, especially if we're eventually going to get rid of Star Alliance. I mean, they've got to be rotated out at some point. But how do you keep upgrades relevant without the kind of cards that they brought in? Or how can you do it in a different way? I think that the Singing Scythe and the modular exoskeleton is a really good way to do that. Having like the other upgrade from Geistoid, animating force.
Hmm.
Yes, you can scrap that one, and that one also gives you an effect. So I think that's another design space that they can explore for kind of getting around the issue of having too many upgrades and no creatures to play among, giving them scrap effects. For example, you could do something similar, kind of between those two ideas, where you can scrap it and archive it like the Screel Swarm, and then that can
Hmm.
give you, you know, a little bit more time to kind of set up, get your creature, have it ready so that you can pull that, play it, and it's not just sitting and clogging up your hand. They could definitely explore those design spaces a lot more. There's also
Yeah.
there's also some new cards that don't start as upgrades and then become upgrades. So there's the Came Back Wrong and Untamed, and then there's a couple more in Geistoid that will they're an action card that come back as an upgrade on a creature. Spontaneous Awakening? No,
Hmm.
is that it?
Uh, Spontaneous Awakening destroys an artifact or a robot if they're haunted, and then plays it as an
Okay, yeah,
upgrade after that. Yeah.
yeah, that's the one.
Yeah. Very weird. It's very weird rules wise, and you have to kind of use your imagination, I think, to say that that works within the current scope of the rules. But yeah, definitely like a unique implementation of trying to make upgrades different. And technically, I think that's an action, if I'm not mistaken. But for all
Hmm.
intents and purposes, it's an upgrade.
Yep.
That's
Poltergeistoid's
that's what I'm
also
saying.
being one that you were kind of thinking about there too.
Oh, that's
Uh,
the one I was thinking of. Yeah.
yep.
Yeah.
It's
So we've
interesting
got.
though. Modular exoskeleton, singing scythe. I don't know. I kind of thought that Officer's Blaster from Dark Tidings was trying to capture this idea of like, hey, you're on the battlefield, the person next to you bid it, and you pick up their gear and keep going. Um, I, I
Yeah.
I kind of like that conceptually for modular exoskeleton and singing scythe as well, though I don't know if they really leaned into it from the flavor standpoint quite as much as Officer's Blaster. Um, but I like where they're at playing with things. I mean, I think they're more interesting cards than if they had just been, if modular exoskeleton had just been +4 power and you get a pip and you get a nugget. They're kind of saying like, no, we don't want you to just play this for an amber and move on with your life. We want you to like really think about making your creatures more sticky and how can you kind of lean into that from a strategy. So even if it's not like the best card, I like that they're trying to say like, no, think about using upgrades in a different way than you were, like actually just the value on the card itself, and we're gonna make it more or making it easier for you to like have that as a reliable resource than have it be a one-off thing where you kind of maybe ignore the text a little bit, play it for the amber, and move on. Yeah. So I guess that was a long-winded way of saying like I like it. I don't know if I want to see it in like high volume, but I think it's pretty cool. Yeah.
I think chat wants us to talk about blaster bouncing. Do we want to go there? It's not a thing, for the record,
I could
anymore.
kind of talk about it. So I've never played a deck that could do bouncer blasting, and it was already like a non-issue and had a ruling on it by the time that I started playing and got into things. Um, my reckoning at the time was that shouldn't work. It's too powerful. At the point we're at now, you can let it happen.
Oh
It's
yeah,
fine.
yeah.
There's no
I
reason to
think
not have bouncer blasting anymore. Well, in the context of establishing the rules around like self-referential text and clarifying that, I think there's an important ruling to be made on bouncer blasting, but they could easily like reword those in a way that lets you do it, and I don't think it would be busted at
yeah.
this point.
Not anymore. You're totally right. Um, Last week we had we talked about errata on the show, and one of the we talked about different types of errata that exist in games, and one of the ones we talked about was like play experience being a reason,
Hmm.
and I think play experience was actually the reason why they eventually disallowed blaster bouncing because somebody came up with the a rules lawyering situation to show that with multiple Commander Chans and a Chan's Blaster, you could rule of six every single creature on your board. And you look at it and you're like, okay, like I think technically that's right, and that's just kind of like a bad play experience to have to track that, to have that little nuance of like, well, technically I can do this. And I think it was more that than it was like being able to bounce blasters back and forth that was really the catalyst to make the change.
Mm, I can see that. Yeah.
That's interesting. Hmm, I'll have to look into that. I'm curious. I'm curious about that. I'm not doubting you, but curious that if that's where it came from.
That's your
It
first mistake. You didn't doubt me.
quick draw making stuff up again, just letting them
I
get
didn't
away
make
with
that
it.
one up. I don't think I did. I could be misremembering it, but I didn't straight up like pull it out of nowhere.
Yeah, I get why bouncer blasting doesn't work under the rules that we have currently. I also feel like the intuition behind it points strongly toward it probably should work.
Mm, yeah.
That's my take. So I get why it doesn't work. Reading the rules, starting from first principles, what we've got. But I also feel like it's one of those where we probably I don't know. I guess I feel like in game design generally, if enough of your players are doing the wrong thing, maybe you should reconsider whether the right thing is the right thing. And if
Mm,
you've set up these
yeah.
cards in such a way where, gosh, every time people sit down and play with them, their first instinct is to do it a certain way. Maybe you should consider whether that is the right way, or if there's something else going on that could be fixed.
Yeah.
And bouncer blasting to me is in that camp of like, yeah, if I've got two Kirby's or two walls, it sure feels like they ought to be able to hand the blaster from one to the other and get something out
I,
of the
I
deal.
I just want to point out, and I'm sorry if I'm picking on you, JT, but you did say bouncer blasting, which I think is really funny.
Say bouncer blasting. Well, this is my $5 blunder.
JT's going to the club and just blasting the bouncers.
Yeah, bouncing the
Um,
blasters, indeed, with my booties. I don't know.
it's always the degenerate stuff though that like makes the change happen. Like the Commander Chan rule of sixing your entire board. When it's like all I wanted was to use my Psyops or Kincans and archive every creature on the board. Like that's not that bad compared to rule of sixing my entire board, but I can't do that because Commander Chan ruined the fun.
Mm-hmm.
Hmm. Hmm. I need to see. I'm not seeing how the Commander Chan one works out. Maybe I'm being dense.
You need a very long description, but I will find it for you. We'll definitely put that in the show notes when I find it. Um, I was very skeptical when I read it, but I think by the letter of the law, maybe like Blinking Line could be like, yeah, by the letter of the law at the time, that
Hmm.
technically worked.
Maybe it was the sort of thing where a creature counted as being used in. Well, I don't know. It's interesting.
It was
Oh,
like
I'm curious.
nesting abilities where it's like you just use Commander Chan one,
Oh,
and
I
then you
see.
trigger the bouncing it to the other one, which lets you use the other one in the same time frame that you're still responding to the first one,
I
which
see.
then lets you bounce it back, and you're still in that window of that first one having like been in the after reap, and it gains this new ability of like bouncing the blaster again, and you just keep doing it back and forth.
Okay, so you don't actually have to use the Chan again, but you're still within the window where it gets the benefit. Okay, and it's lost the ability and regains it. Okay, I see where this is going. I don't have it fully mapped out, but I at least have like
Yeah,
the kernel of the understanding that I'm like, okay, I gotcha. I gotcha. Okay,
yeah.
well, that's cool. But also makes me really sad anyway because I have this beautiful triple walls blaster deck that just wants to stun all your dudes. And like, come on, man, just let me stun all your
Yeah,
dudes.
right? Like that's exactly what I mean. Like that's pretty innocuous, but it's not allowed because Commander Shan came to the party and ruined all the fun.
Commander Chan ruined all the fun, and then we had to outclass Chan in Grim Reminders because we took away his blaster.
Corporal Bridger.
Corporal Bridger, where's Corporal Bridger's blaster? We can try over with the mulligan.
All right. We are off track.
Mm.
Um, too many bouncers blasted. Um,
So you had
where
a
where do we where do we go here? So,
you had a
um,
question in your show notes about buffing versus nerfing. Um,
Mm-hmm.
so when it comes to things like I think you said like pentaquarter or quadriquarter. Like, do you play quadriquarter on your side or your opponent's side. Or I think a different card. What
No,
was the
that's the
other
right.
one you said?
No, that's the one. It's the quadricorder is the one that it.
Quadricorder and disruption field.
Yep.
Right, right.
Yeah.
Um, so, well, to that answer, it's nerf or nothing. Obviously.
Or for nothing.
Yeah,
Nice.
yeah. Joking on that part. Just it depends. And that's a very KeyForge answer, but I think that's the answer that you want in KeyForge is it's situational and it depends. It requires kind of assessing how likely is it gonna stick on your board versus how likely will it stick on their board. Does putting it on their board create a hard decision point for them where they either have to deal with the taxing or get rid of a creature that's maybe important for them, and then that can be a way to cause people to misplay and slip up. And just about every upgrade kind of comes down to this. A lot of them can be very flexible in how they're played to some niche or degree or another. Uh, Upgrades that can't are less fun, in my opinion. So stuff like weak link.
Mm-hmm.
Actually, I'm not a huge fan of weak link. It's very cool if you can combo it with like under pressure. And for those who don't know, weak link, when the creature that it's played onto is exhausted, that player their keys cost like +6. Um, Usually, people are just gonna not, have that creature tapped down because at the start of their turn they've already readied most of their cards. So you combo it with other things in Unfathomable, but then you need those other things in Unfathomable. So you might have things that only like tap it down once. It's a very situational card in itself, but playing it on your own creatures does not offer much of a benefit, and I struggle finding a way that it does. But on the
All
other
right.
hand,
Quick
I'm
draw
gonna
will do it
warn
every
you.
time. I'll do it every
I'm gonna
time.
do. I'm gonna ask. I'm gonna make the point. I'm just gonna give everyone a warning that's listening. Ketzer, would you say that weak link, when you see it in your deck list, is the weakest link?
usually, yeah, but it does have a pip on it, I believe.
It does.
Um,
Yeah.
so that's better than some upgrades. There's some upgrades that like dive pod. Dive pod is terrible. It
Dive
does
Pod is like the
something
poster child
at
for why
least.
people hate DT.
Uh, it's so bad. Like you were saying, upgrades have a hard enough time as it is, and to take up a rare slot in the house that cares about upgrades, you can't give it a pip. You can't make it interact with the. Anyways, I can go on about that for a while. Um, well, even like so, if you look at the first set, all of the upgrades in the first set have an amber pip, unless they give you a way to make more amber on playing it on a ready creature. So you've got control the weak or collar control, the control collar. You play that on a creature that your opponent has. If they're ready, you can use that creature potentially. Um, there's like the Dusk Runner. You reap, you gain an extra amber. And the only one that like kind of breaks that is experimental therapy because it exhausts and stuns your creature. So it gives you 2 turns without using them and doesn't give you an amber pit. And you would ask a question before the show, like about at like what point, how strong does a card, an upgrade need to be to not have the amber pip on it?
Mm-hmm.
Um, I don't know if FFG knew. I
Well,
don't know if GG knows.
dive
But
pod is the answer, obviously.
more of these cards need pips, y'all. More of these upgrades need pips. I know things like Unity or Discord and Transporter Platform
Yeah.
and your cheap engineer walls. I know those exist to give you recursion, but still, that's part of the great beauty of upgrades is they can fill that space and be recurred because they're less good inherently.
Yeah.
Mm.
Dive pod needs those needs those sandworm ambers back that lent out.
Yeah. Dang. Right.
It's like, yeah. Oh man, that's funny. Interesting. But
Yeah. So I
yeah.
want to actually um, clarify a rules thing like that. I think a lot of experienced players know, but maybe not everyone listening will recognize this. We were talking about quadricorder and disruption field earlier,
Mm.
and it is important to distinguish the difference because if you have the upgrade in your deck, the text will belong to you. And so the quadricorder says your opponent's keys cost +1 for each house among friendly creatures. Even if you put that upgrade on the opponent's creature, it's still talking about you as the owner of that upgrade.
Ah,
The difference
almost.
with disruption field, oh, almost
Almost. You're the controller of the upgrade, even when you play it on an opposing creature, right? So
correct,
you
yeah.
can big magnet to change controllership, I believe, of an upgrade. And if you big magnet an opposing quadricoder, I
Hmm.
believe you become the controller of that quadricoder. I think.
I don't know about that. And it says
Hmm.
take control. Maybe you do. Yeah. I haven't seen that one yet. That's I think I think you're probably right. But
It's a
you
curious
know,
interaction.
it is a curious interaction. Setting aside niche cases like that, the quadricorder is important to remember that no matter which creature you put it on, yours or your opponent's, it's still going to have the same effect on your opponent. It
Hmm.
does not say this creature gains. Whereas the disruption field has two different clauses. One clause says your opponent's keys cost +1 for each counter on each disruption counter on this creature, and then the second part gains says this creature gains fight or reap, add a disruption counter.
Yes.
So if you put the disruption field on your opponent's creature, they can just choose to not fight or reap, and they will never have any taxed keys from it. Quadricorder, on the other hand, like Kessler, you were saying, where do you put this one? I think you put it on the creature that's you expect to survive the longest, and maybe that's your opponent's creature that you can't kill. Maybe it's your opponent's creature that you know they can't kill or they don't want to kill. And so there's definitely like the strategy involved there. But I just wanted to kind of point out the rules difference with like this creature gains versus just like a static effect of an upgrade.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Yeah. This is the interesting part with quadricorder. Um, exactly. You still get the benefit from it when playing it on an opposing creature. And yeah, we'll have to check on whether it's controllership or ownership. I think it's. I'm putting my money on controllership. Controllership. And also making up that
I'm
word
not,
while we're at
yeah,
it.
I'm not gonna fight that one. I'm not confident enough to say that that's wrong.
Yeah, sounds like an Ask the Judge question indeed. Indeed, Zoc, indeed, Data Forge stream. And I
There
do
you go.
recall when Big Magnet was being implemented for TCO, there was some discussion about it. I think it may be the first card we have that changes who controls an upgrade. I think it's the first one, and that was kind of finicky to tackle. Could be misremembering. Ned Mike, if you're listening, let us know. Yeah, I want to say he ended up doing it. But yeah, it was kind of a funky one. It was one of the ones that was the last stragglers um, of GR to be implemented because
Hmm.
that particular interaction was super funky. Yeah.
Uh,
So I think that is something that I would like, I guess, newer players to take away from the idea of upgrades, being more flexible, being able to play them on your opponent's creatures or your own creatures, and kind of considering more far-reaching implications of those. Um, so, for example, you were talking about like putting the either of those upgrades on a creature that your opponent has a hard time destroying.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and you can make that even harder by doing things like giving it skirmish so that it can't fight into your
hmm.
creatures. You know,
Yeah.
skirmish usually something you only want to put on your creatures, but there's an instance where it could benefit to put it on the opponent.
Yeah.
Similar with something like evasive. If you're playing like a Pester Grove deck like we had before, or if you just have enraged creatures, you can put the elusive on an opponent's creature to fight, even get in a fight effect, and not lose that creature to the fight.
Yeah.
So there's like fun little things that you can do like that. Uh, some that are maybe less obvious is if you have an enraged creature and you put a detention coil on it, which says this creature cannot fight.
Mm-hmm.
You don't have to worry about the enrage anymore.
Yep, you
You
just
could
read.
just go read.
That's right. Yeah, I've definitely had my fair share of games where I played an encounter suit on my opponent's Brend or Dust Imp or something like that, and they always look at it like, "Huh, that's." You know, it usually is met with like surprise and like a little bit of like hat tip for that one. That's a pretty good one right there, because everyone thinks of encounter suit as like such a strong card to keep your creatures alive, and it's like, okay, well, try to kill that Dust
Right.
Imp now.
Totally. Totally. Yeah, there's the 15-second pause on TCO. You're like, yeah, there was stunned appreciation for the play.
Yeah.
I like it.
Those are fun interactions to find when you have them.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Cool. Cool. Well, fun stuff. I don't know. I feel like I have, I don't know, 10, 15 tabs open of the different decks as well that we were pulling up as potential candidates to talk through uh, for this topic. And that was one of the things that struck me too. I think we had this on our backlog for a while of ideas to hash on, and it was like, well, how niche is this strategy? Like, are Voltrons really a thing? Like, is this just a niche thing that shows up once in a while? Um, but then we started listing them off and like, oh my gosh, there's like 15, 20 off the top of our heads that are like either true Voltron decks or like lean into upgrades in a very integral way to what the deck's trying to do. And they're all super varied, like super diverse strategies. And I think that's pretty cool in that, yeah, it's this big kind of umbrella archetype. Let's call it an umbrella archetype, very, very loosely defined one. But I don't know, for the card type that gets the least amount of attention, I would argue, there's an awful lot of like different and neat things that you can do with it, and really tickles the Johnny in me, I suppose you could say. Yeah, yeah. I am looking forward to our game later because I think we'll have some like fun shenanigans going down.
Hope so.
Yeah.
Do you guys have any kind of like lesser known one card upgrade combos that you or strategies maybe that you like to share?
One card upgrade combos
Yeah,
like
not thinking
oh,
like
like a
Orion
single
with like
upgrade.
yeah, like a single upgrade in a situation that like you find to be like on a specific creature or in a specific situation that you think is kind of like less commonly seen, but maybe you've gotten value from it recently.
Um, so this one it probably seems pretty obvious if you play a decent amount of Winds of Exchange, but one that I have a bit of fun with is my Prospector deck has two Niffle Paws. Um, so if you get the ready Prospectors, you slap a Niffle Paw on one and just kind of like pass it around, blowing them all up as you reap with them. Um, that's a pretty
Mm,
interesting one. I've
mm-hmm.
got a Key Abduction deck with a Brainstem Antenna, and a
Mm,
Brainstem Antenna has a lot of very interesting applications, especially if you've got something like Key Abduction to bounce things. Um, you could play at that with different angles where you don't even have to use the abduction part. You can play that before even playing the Brainstem Antenna, so you have more to trigger off with the Brainstem. Um, let's
yeah,
see.
and Sky Booster Squadron alongside that is fantastic as well.
Mm,
Absolutely, getting those extra Martian plays. Yeah.
Yeah, and I had a deck actually that used that exact thing with Tesmal to put the Brainstem antenna on the Tesmal with a couple of Sky Booster Squadrons and just repeat it every turn.
Awesome. Made lots of friends with that deck, I'm sure. Yeah.
Well, it didn't work all the time, but it was a good one to think about.
Mm.
an interesting one to conceptualize is a chosen one with either friendship, so that when it gets hit with the damage, it just kind of spreads out to its neighbors and it doesn't actually take damage.
Yeah.
Or uh, what's the one? Z wave emitter, where at the beginning of your turn you could just ward it before it would take the damage.
Mm-hmm. Have it
I
ward
think it takes the
command
damage at the end of opponent's turn,
at the end
So at
of
the
but
end of
when they ready, it will take the damage.
oh, right, right, right,
Yeah.
yeah, but
right.
it still is
So
it's very
the
pesky because if they can't remove that ward, then they're like not doing anything to it.
And the critical thing there too is the damage is all dealt at the same time. It's not like the first thing the
Yeah.
ready removes a ward. No, it just loses the ward, nothing readies, and it kind of goes on. which is pretty fun. Pretty fun if you have the chosen one on your side of the field. Yeah, yeah. Gosh, I don't know if I had to pick one cool interaction. I mean, we've talked about Calpitian Ideal already a lot. Um, I have it in a deck that pairs with the United Action as well as Data Forge and some tributes. Pretty neat in that it counts as a Saurian card for your United Action turn. If you happen to have it on board already, that's pretty cool to enable that house. But also, yeah, loading up dudes and often going on something that's going to be either next to a Ludo or with some other. This one doesn't have a ton of other upgrades in it, but if we're talking about single upgrade value like that plus tributes is just kind of a really nice combo, especially if you have ways to protect the amber, ward the creature, what have you. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
I had one that this is a pretty simple one, probably old school one. If there's Coda players listening, you might have seen this before too. I have a Coda deck that doesn't really care as much about the board, but it does have a Silent Dagger in it. And Silent Dagger is the Shadows upgrade that says Reap, deal 4 damage to a flank creature. And the fun thing about that is that that is not optional. So I
Yes.
found that since I don't ever care about having creatures on the board, drop the Silent Dagger on their creature that they're going to reap with next, and they are having to deal 4 damage to their own creature if they reap with it in a future turn, because I don't have any creatures on the board anyway. I thought that was a pretty cool interaction, interesting use of a card that I'd never done before then.
That's
It's a
fun.
clever play, yeah.
And if
Is the
sorry, if Beaker were here, he would absolutely mention the OG Voltron, the one that started it all, right? Ember Imp and Flame Wreath, or Restringuntress, I guess, if you're doing that route too. But yeah.
how have we not mentioned Rocket Tezzy yet?
It's a
Oh,
great question.
oof. I
We mentioned Brainstem Antenna Tezzy before we mentioned Rocket Stem Tezzy,
had to
or Rocket Boots Tezzy.
leave that firmly in Zach's camp. Yeah, I suppose.
Yeah. We've stolen enough material from Zach before. We don't need to steal that one.
There you go. There you go.
Hand cannon and gas pipes alone.
Also fun.
That's a good one.
Also
Very
fun.
cool.
Cool. Well, either of you folks have any last notes we want to hit? Otherwise, we can hear a word from our sponsor and then play a game. Sounds good too. Yeah.
Good with me.
I think I'm pretty good, yeah.
Awesome. Well, you'll appreciate this quick draw. This episode of Bottom Beaker is sponsored by Sweeper Keeper, your ultimate board game companion. Say goodbye to dusty game nights with this innovative tool designed to effortlessly remove dirt and debris from your board gaming surfaces. Elevate your gameplay experience and keep those favorite board games in top condition. Don't wait until you're bored to sweep. Get your Sweeper Keeper today. Quick draw, do you ever find yourself looking for board sweepsers?
Never. Never. I refuse to use their product. I will take their money. And no further comment.
Nice. Not enough said. Well, folks, I'll let you also all know that Bottom of the Beaker is recorded live right here, twitch.tv/sloppy labwork, Wednesday evenings at 9:30 Eastern Time. You can find recordings of our past shows and other streams over at youtube.com. We are at Sloppy Labwork over there. For the very best content, 34? No, 57 times distilled and scraped from the bottom of the beaker. You can search for that very phrase in your podcatcher of choice. And we'll be there, loaded up with a whole bunch of upgrades to do battle with you. Thanks so much to Ketzer for joining us again, returning to hang out with our sloppy selves and talk upgrades this evening. Thanks, Ketzer.
Thanks again for having me, y'all.
Good
Our
to chat
pleasure.
again, Ketzer. Thanks.
Indeed. And quick draw, any final words for the folks getting off at the last audio stop?
No, thanks for listening to this Voltron upgrade special. Hopefully it has upgraded your Keyforge game in a way. Maybe you're thinking about things a little bit differently. So thank you all for tuning in and listening. And don't forget to stay sloppy.
Stay sloppy indeed. Awesome. Yeah, some good ideas indeed. I'm going to stop the recording. Just say that we dodged dodged a bullet and I haven't lost power yet. How about that? We got a clean recording out of that. And yeah, it hasn't even started snowing really in earnest. I think it's still kind of mostly rain, but we'll
I
see.
can't believe you're getting snow right now. I'd be so mad if it
I'm
were snowing where I am.
it's it was one of the least snowy winters I've seen in Maine. I'm in southern Maine, and I think I like do my own snow blowing, right? And I probably had to do it twice. I think had to do it
Hmm.
twice up until like a week ago, and within the last 14 days I've also done it twice. So we'll see. Yeah. Yeah.
I went on a I went on a trip, spring break in like 2010 or 11 to Vermont, and at the time they had what they said was some of the worst snow that they had had in like decades,
Hmm.
and it was literally like 6 7 feet in some places,
Yeah.
depending on like where it was stacked up at.
Yeah, I also went to school in Maine, and there were some winters where I would walk between classes, and like in the pathways, you like couldn't see out the pathways. It just was like up above your head. You're like, okay, this is fun times, like tunneling to class. Yeah, yeah, right
If
on.
y'all want to get a game ready, I think I need to step to use the restroom real quick, and then I can be ready to go play a game.
All right, do
All
it up.
right, we'll get set up.
All right.
Cool.
Uh, JT, so we gonna hand and brain?
Yeah, I think we
Let's
will.
strategize when Ketzer's not here. What are we thinking?
Well, I have some good options. I have some good options. Uh, do you want to play one of mine, or you got one that you'd like to jam?
I only have one or two. I'd love to play something new though. I'm into new things, and I think the last few times we've played Hand and Brain, I believe you've been the hand. So I feel
Mm-hmm.
like it's time for us to switch a little bit. So I'm happy to try something out here.
Okay. Okay. Well, let's see if any of these tickle your fancy, or folks in the chat. I'm gonna take Gnor off the board because we've played it already
Yeah,
on
I want to try something
stream.
new as well. That's good.
Let's see how many peppers Ketzer's feeling like. They've got a
I
couple.
was going to say the same thing.
Yeah, they've got a
See what
few.
he thinks.
So I think Prince Kleptogamer's not really in Voltron territory, though it does feature upgrades very prominently. Glenn's super cool. I'd say that's in the 4.5 peppers range. Um,
Hmm.
Zoltan subtly so and Glenn the telepathist of Barleywood is my double brainstem antenna, double Uxlix the Zookeeper deck, with a bunch of archiving that will load up archives with Martians, unload the Zookeeper to abduct your board with the brainstems, and is a lot of fun. Features double Eureka Brig combo, lots of archiving, good times. Subtly riveted Zoltan, lots of fun. Uh, Probably in the 3.5 to 4 pepper range, I'd say. 3.5 is probably 4 is like as the parent of the deck. I say 4, but it's probably more like 3.5. You know.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Um, what about DT? You got any
I do have a good
solid?
DT Voltron deck actually. Arc Chip of the Quacks Towers Evil Twin. Um, this deck, quick draw. Let me sell you on this deck. This deck features uh, Urian, but it's an evil Urian, the Circumspect.
Hmm.
Um, it also features
How
a.
do you boost its armor though? That's always been my beef with the Evil Orion.
So, let me remind myself of the upgrades here. It has double shoulder armor.
Oh, it
Uh,
does have shoulder armors. Okay, that
yeah,
helps.
double shoulder armor, encounter suit, officer's blaster, double ambervac. The amberbac's super funny to have on your sticky Voltron with the uh, with the
Encounter
encounter
suit.
suit too, right?
Yeah.
And I love this deck a lot because of the final analysis it has with triple capture, with the triple
That's
capture
very
hand.
sad. Yeah.
But if you have the a creature with encounter suit, you can take advantage of those capture pips. Um,
True.
yeah,
Hmm.
yeah.
So, Ketzer's back. We would like to know on a scale of 1 to 5, how many spicy peppers are you looking to play this evening?
Let's see.
Because, the SAS range is, you can say like a 90 SAS. That doesn't mean it's a good deck. So we like to have a more accurate rating system, which is how many peppers.
I
So
think
whatever you're in the mood to play tonight, I think it sounds like JT's got decks in a wide range.
let's do I'm gonna say a 3. I think I'm gonna play Granite. Granite's
Three's
got a
three's
lot of
excellent. I think JT's
upgrades.
got some good options at 3.
I'd say the Quack's Towers, the possessive enhancements on this name throw me off all the time. But I think it's a 3 pepper deck roughly, maybe a little bit north of 3, probably 3, probably
Yeah,
3.
looking at the arc stats, this couldn't be more than a 3 in my opinion.
Oh, quick draw! You are not one with the Voltron strategy.
Let's do this one. So, Ketzer, I think we played Hand and Brain last time you were on, so we're going to do this again. I will play as the hand this time, which means that I'm going to play one of JT Russell's decks, and JT is going to be the brain, and he's going to choose which house. He's going to choose whether or not I mulligan, and unfortunately, he's going to choose the order of keys that are forged as
hmm
well.
hmm Yeah. Do you want any more? Do you want any more discussion on the deck, or you want to kind of figure it out as we go?
Let's figure it out as we go. That's
Okay.
part of the fun.
Awesome. Awesome. I put
All
the
right.
deck link
So
in chat so folks can
I
see it and Quick Draw can import it.
grab that. So, Ketzer, I'm going to start a game for us after I import this one over on TCO.
Yeah, ready?
Yeah. And this deck, fun fact, has a wonderful name for the lab, right? Quack's Tower's Evil Twin. We love our ducks here in the lab.
Mm.
And I will also say that the Archon art for this deck features what looks like a tower with ducks around it, which
No
is,
way.
I swear, I
Go
don't have,
find it right now.
I have no idea where the deck is, but I swear, I swear it looks like a tower with ducks around it.
And we
And,
talked about towering earlier.
and
So, like,
yes,
it's all tying in together.
it's like so appropriate. I'm gonna have to look up the deck. I'll find it. I'll find the deck. It's gonna
All
be
right.
something that looks
One
nothing
of
like
these
it.
turns when I go into the tank, you just like scoot away in your chair and go find that Archon for us. Uh, Ketzer, the
Yeah.
game is up
Sorry.
under beginner. Password
Gotcha.
is sloppy.
I should have guessed. There we go.
I will put it in the show notes. I will put it in the show notes. Keep me honest, chat too. This one, I owe the show notes this picture.
Yeah, I want to see it. You owe it to me.
Yep. And you have hands visible, quick draw?
Nope, I sure don't.
Hand and brain and,
I'm gonna make a new game for you there, Ketzer.
All right.
Stay sloppy.
Speaking of ducks, something I forgot to mention. I worked recently doing some backgrounds for Keyforge content creator, Flightless Pheasant on YouTube. Check him out. Look
Oh,
him up.
cool.
Nice.
Yeah, well,
He's doing a series where he goes through cycles. So cards that have are featured in multiple houses. So like the ships or the shards, that kind of thing.
Mm-hmm.
And he had me do some artwork for him to do some new backgrounds to make an ambassador, like the Sanctum ambassadors,
yeah.
for each of the houses that didn't get to get one.
Oh,
Cool.
that's cool.
Very nice.
That's cool.
And I brought it up relating to ducks because in one of the backgrounds, I hit a few little Easter eggs, and one of them is a, see if you can find that.
All right. I'm
Okay.
looking it up right now.
All right, so we've got Granite the Oddball of Powder. This is your 10 upgrade deck with the Light of the Archons, double shoulder
Yeah.
armor. Um, so it's a good thing we've got a little bit of creature control because we're probably gonna
But
need it.
worth pointing out, not only is it rare in the sense that it has 10 upgrades, but that Light of the Archon that takes advantage of the 10 upgrades is a legacy.
Yeah, super cool.
Oh, wow! I wouldn't even have thought of that.
Mm-hmm.
That's very, very cool. Very convenient.
Yeah, Light of the
All right.
Archons, man, probably a thing we may have noted, but like I do feel like either Light of the Archons or gosh, drawing a blank, and Countersuit probably both your typical upgrades you're looking for when you're trying to establish a Voltron, right? Something that's going to like either put the tower out of range height wise, or give it the fortifications to survive bombardment, as it were. Yeah,
Yeah.
Yeah,
yeah.
yeah. And Countersuit's usually the best one, I think, but there's also like
Mm-hmm.
the Force Field, Sea Wave Emitter.
Yep.
Halo of Enlightenment is a new one.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, yeah.
Classic Ghost Form.
We're going to let's mulligan this one. Quick draw.
All right. Glad we're already on the same page.
Nice.
Seems
Oh,
much better.
seems better. I need to remind myself of. Okay.
What cards do?
Yeah, what some of the cards do. I have the full size cards visible right are showing right now too. I think we don't have half size cards yet for Grim Reminders. Oof.
Oh,
But
I only ever go full size
do you full size all the time?
all
Wow.
the time.
Wow. Interesting.
All
Interesting.
right. So am I gonna?
Let's
You gotta
go.
choose my house here.
Let's go Starlines.
Okay. I will go star,
Mm-hmm.
and I will just play a evil twin cheetah.
Cool. I like it.
Cool art on the evil twin cheetah. Couple Star Alliance hot rods riding a motorcycle that's on fire.
Now I have to look up the ooh, other cheetah. Okay, and we've got a shouldered with an opportunist. Okay,
Hmm.
See there.
interesting. Sanctum, if you please. Quick draw.
I sure will. Let's drop Lady Lorena over on the right, and let's drop a Gatekeeper over on the left. We are going to Hammergram the Shoulderid and Shoulder Armor on the Gatekeeper.
Mm-hmm.
Mhm. Right.
Cool, cool, cool.
Get some Star Alliance action in here. Yeah. Here I'm going with a little bit more of a spread out strategy than an all on one strategy, maybe.
Cool. So we got a
We'll kind of see
crewman
how the
lord
game unfolds.
with a Loda. Nice. Okay, I like it. Let's go. Hmm. Let's go Star Alliance quick draw.
All right, let's see here. Let's make sure my ordering is correct here.
Testing you already. Testing you already.
I like it. I like being tested. Um, don't know if there's a way for me to do this because of that Light of the Archons. don't think so. Well, technically there is. I don't know if I want to do that though. Hmm. All right, let's get cute.
Yeah.
Um,
Yes.
let's go star. Um, let's drop an Amber Vac on your crewman Yorg,
Okay.
and let's. Oh shoot, did I do this right? Nope, I
No, you
sure
effed
did
up.
not. I totally effed up. Forgot about raising the tide. Well, it's all right. You can have that crewman Yorg. Um, I had the right idea,
You had the right
right?
idea.
Didn't I?
You had the right idea. It was good. I like where your head's at. Mm-hmm.
What could I have done differently though?
I can't tell you now. We can talk about it after.
Okay, you can tell me. You can tell me after my turn.
Yeah,
Um,
yeah.
oh shoot. All right. Well, maybe I still can't do this. No, I can't. We'll just play the selective preservation just to kill your shoulder id.
Mm,
And I would have needed to raise the tide. No, there's no way I could have done it. All right.
You could have
I'm
done
gonna
it.
together, and I'm gonna drop isotropic core and a light everlasting.
Breaking my heart. Quick draw. Breaking my heart.
Yeah. Um. All right. Tell me what. I don't understand how I could have done that because of the.
All right. So together first. Yeah.
Uh-huh.
Bilge Warden on the left flank.
To raise.
Raises the tide. You'll get another play, which
Okay.
was the
All right.
isotropic
Yeah.
core. Now your gatekeeper's a 5, and the oh no, sorry, not Bilge Warden, not isotropic core. The no, yeah, isotropic core, and then you have the grand, not grand melee.
Selective
Selective
preservation.
preservation kills their
Yeah.
duders. Yep, yep.
Yep. Yep. Yep. Yep. All right.
okay. And I think I'm gonna do something like this. Put shoulder armor here.
All right. He'll
Okay,
survive, I guess.
okay.
Well, we're making good use of the upgrades tonight.
We
That's for
are
sure.
spicy. Ooh, Gray Rider
Ooh,
comes down.
what happened there? Oh, I know what happened there.
Yeah, you put Grey Rider on the flank as
Whoops.
opposed to the middle.
Hmm. Okay, and so it died. That's interesting because it died. It didn't actually let me use.
It didn't let you use Crewman York.
Oh,
Ooh. Okay. Let's do that.
interesting. I was gonna say we can roll that back. That was weird.
Oh no, that's fine. That's yeah. On me.
What do you got now, JT? A lot of options here.
All right, so let's see. They've got a Barrister Joya. We're not fighting, or we're not reaping. Excuse me. Got a Seeker of Truth. Gray Rider's down. Okay, cool. A lot of options indeed. Tide's high for us.
Mm-hmm.
I think I like Sanctum here.
Yeah, me too. All right. So tide is high, so each of Cheetah's neighbors gains skirmish, which means Lady Lorena is gonna fight off the Barrister Joya, and I'm still gonna fight. Um, yeah, Gatekeeper is gonna fight and kill the crewman Yorg. Drop a bulwark on the right. And let's put another shoulder armor on the gatekeeper since this is a Voltron episode.
Nice. I don't know why, but I find myself very often going very tall on like a random Sanctum dude with this deck. Like I'll end up with a Gatekeeper or a General Salvador with, the shoulder armors and the encounter suit and an ambervac, and it's like, yeah, it's just a big body collecting amber.
Yeah.
This is what's happening. Yeah.
Mm, really.
Okay, we got a Scout Pete. Kept the card, I think. Nice. Explorover comes down, wears a stunner, and Scout Pete wears an Observe You Max. Cool, cool.
I feel like I need to go a little bit wider here because you've got like a good board for just taking down anything I've got before I can get ready.
Yeah. Um, I think we're sticking in Sanctum here. Yeah, Sanctum it is.
Okay. Yeah, I know what I got to get done here. This deck needs to make amber, but I also can't let some of these guys stick around. So I'm going to actually keep fighting. Fight down the Grey Rider. Let's see here. We've seen 6 Star Lions from you already and 6 Sanctum. So I think I'm going to take my chances that you're going to go Shadows and just kind of force a check and just make some amber somehow.
Okay. Cool, cool. Into Sanctum. Interesting. Yeah, I guess we have. So we've got the Font of the Eye. Do we have a fight?
That was probably not the right way to go, but
Free markets. 2 amber. Cool. One stood against many. Nice.
all right, this doesn't actually get a lot.
Oh,
that's
that's
very
cool. So cool.
Get you.
It actually will die
Nice.
because of the Osotropic Core.
Get you.
At the end, yeah. So
Oh,
that's
that was
gonna-
for the. Wait, what just happened there?
So you ping the armor of Lady Lorena, and you stunned the general, and you took 1 for hazardous.
and so
Yeah.
it needs to respect taunt still, right? So the Lady Orlena
Yeah.
has super taunt.
Oh, right.
Oh, so you can't fight 3 times.
Yeah, we're get
Right,
one
I
fight.
forgot that Lorena was the one that double taunts.
Mhm.
Right. Okay.
Yes. Interesting. I
Okay.
would have guessed that it would let you fight Lady Lorena 3 times.
It says a different creature each time, I think.
Yeah.
I actually forgot about the stunner prompt. I was clicking on General Zavador to fight that one next.
Oh, to fight that one next.
I ended up put the stun there, but that's okay. That's
No,
Well,
I
it
mean,
wouldn't let you anyway because of the taunt. So.
that's a misclick though. Do you want to type stun somebody else? We'll swap.
Oh yeah, we can definitely stun someone else.
nah, that one's fine to stun. I think actually, yeah.
Okay.
All right. So I've got a key to forge here, JT.
I mean that you have to ask. That you do
I'm gonna
ask.
make you say it.
I appreciate, but that you have to ask makes me disappointed. It'll be red. Red key. Thank you.
All right. We got a key. First blood.
First blood. Okay. I mean, I really want to keep fighting, but I think I would like to move some cards here. Let's go. Let's go Star Alliance. Actually.
Okay. I like that. So I'm actually gonna play Shield Gelator as an upgrade.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
I'm gonna get rid of that Explo Rover.
Cool.
Um, since I think this will help me stick around a bit longer, I'm gonna play the Encounter Suit on Lady Lorena and Capture on the Gatekeeper. Play Lieutenant Kirker since there's not enough taunt yet, and gonna Reap to keep it going.
Interesting. Cool. I may have. I don't know. Actually, I don't hate that. I was gonna say I may have captured onto Lorena.
I think I might have an idea here.
Yeah, as far as their direct creature control, there's like a tempting offer in there.
Mm-hmm.
Let's
Um,
see if this works out.
that's pretty much it.
Yes.
So the red alert has a damage pip,
The red
which
alert had a
pops the
damage
ward.
pit.
Very nice.
Yeah, super cool.
Very nice.
Let's just use this while we got it. Why not?
Awesome. Awesome. Oh, bummer. That's a bummer.
Hmm.
Bummer for us. Okay, our turn now. Nice. That's sweet. I'm gonna say let's go Logos. Let's go Logos.
Okay. I think I'm just gonna. Oh, that's a tough one. I'm gonna discard the final analysis just because of how little creature control I think you have. I want to keep my big bodies on the board. I will play a Philo the Researcher, and I will give you the Tide and draw a card. I will play a Hydro Cataloger. I will face shift, play an Officer's Blaster on the Phyla, and I'm going to archive 2 cards from my discard pile. It's going to
Mm-hmm.
be a Light Everlasting and Lady Arena.
I do like the play of playing a Bilge Warden to give your opponent the tide before playing Hydro Cataloger so that they can't actually take it and
They
use
don't
it
get the
first.
value from it. Yeah, I like that
Yeah,
too.
that's cool.
Okay. I'm gonna dip in the shadows here and warp this game real quick.
Uh-oh.
Yeah, nice. Gambling Den.
Okay.
Just to give you some more to think about. And that's Officer's Blaster. Okay, so that's gonna go somewhere. Goes to Bilge Warden, right? Zerek on the left.
That's a good
And
Zarek right
let's
there.
get that there so that everybody's got evasive.
That's very good.
Nice.
All right, so this is a first for Hand and Brain. Does the brain choose whether or not to gamble?
Wow. I don't know.
I'm inclined to say, this is a new ruling, I'm inclined to say the brain decides whether or not to gamble, and the hand will decide which house.
Oof.
Oh,
I'm not opposed to that. I'm not opposed to that. Logistically, I guess it's very convenient to be able to pop open your deck and see what the distribution is.
Yeah.
You could tell me maybe to save me from some counting, the count of the most prevalent house in draw pile.
Yeah, there are 3 of the most prevalent, 3 of 7.
And we have one amber.
We have 1.
I don't know why I asked you those questions because I was all in on gambling from the start.
Yeah, of course you're gonna gamble. So I'm gonna trigger yes on the gamble. Is that correct?
That's right. Let's do it.
Okay, so we are gambling, and I'm gonna choose Logos. And you should have known that I always am incorrect.
We're going to talk about your forgive or forget choices later too.
Oh yeah, I'm very happy to tell you why you're wrong.
Okay.
All right. I'm gonna go Logos here.
What?
I will not take. Oh, sorry. I don't get the choice. I'm sorry.
What?
I
What
have to
just
let you.
happened?
Ah, I cheated. All right, Mr. Brain.
It so
You're taking
happens
too
that
long.
I was going to say logos, but you know.
Ah, we cheated. There's an asterisk next to this game now.
Uh-huh. Uh-huh.
I just got impatient slash excited.
No, it's cool. It's cool. I say logos. Logos it is.
All right, so I'm gonna reap with the Bilge Warden first
Mm-hmm.
to archive, and then I am going to drop Phyla on the right and Eddie on the right. Definitely gonna draw a card first. Um, and let's archive. Hmm. Mm, thinking. I don't know if it matters. I'll go with that one. All right.
Cool. Cool, cool, cool.
Let's roll some dice. Nice.
That's how you do it, quick draw. Come on. Get it
Uh,
together.
I've
You
lost
just gotta go with your
so many
gut.
games. I've lost so many games from being 0 for 9 gambling.
Nice.
Let's do this little combo here.
Uh-oh.
So shoulder armor on Secret of Truth. I can fight that.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
And I'll have him make say you right there. Way I get a little bit more value out of this cleansing wave.
Yep.
Ooh, spicy.
We'll throw this guy to the left with that to give him the elusive. And good.
All right. My deck has 3 cards, and it has 2 of one house.
And we have no amber.
We have no amber.
We're gambling.
Good time to gamble.
We're gambling.
All right. I'm just gonna go with my odds and be wrong again. Oh, I nailed it.
Hey,
There
got
we
him.
go. It's an amber back.
Nice. All right, that's some money. I'll take it. Lots of elusive duders over there. Dang.
That's
You
rough,
could
isn't
say
it?
that they're upgraded with amber, as long as Boss Eric's out.
Mm-hmm.
I think if we ever see House Inspired, that'll be something that they probably have as a big mechanic is getting effects from having amber on their creatures.
I'm not familiar with House Inspired. Is that the like the devout
They
religious?
They're more like monks.
Okay.
They're more of like a spiritual than religious. They're in the Secrets of the Crucible is like the other big house other than Skyborn that gets kind of talked about. But they've got a bit of lore around holding amber and like using it as kind of like a meditation practice. That's a very not correct way of describing them, but I don't want to get us off track on a big deep dive into the lore. We could sometime though.
It has been something that we've thought about talking about more in the show.
I'd love to do a lore deep dive. It would be a lot of fun. Mm-hmm. I'm gonna say Star Alliance. Quick draw.
Okay. I will not take the archive. We know the top card, which is great news.
Mm-hmm.
1, 2, 2 there. I will draw them both, which is not good. Or is it? All right. We are going to first just play the Valmart. Draw a card. And I'm going to play a Tabor. And pass the turn.
Ooh. Go ahead. Double down.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, he lost 2.
All right.
Interesting.
Do you always gamble when there's a key on the line?
I like to. With that one, I felt like even if I lost a bit, it's okay with the tax that high. I still like hold some above check right now.
Mm-hmm. Hmm.
And I think what I can do here.
Okay, Star Alliance. Let's see where they go.
Let's see. How can
No,
I keep that from creeping up again like that?
no reaping with an access denied on our Valmart. Cool. Survey comes down.
Spread that out.
Nexus gets a capture. Cool. And a blast shielding on Boss Zarek. Nice. Hmm.
Well, I think I might know the answer this time, but are we going to gamble?
Let's gamble. Let's do it.
There is a single card in deck, so let's hope I don't miss this one.
I would misclick the house for sure. That's the thing I
You've
would
done
do.
it. I've seen you do it before.
I would say the right house, but then definitely click the wrong one.
Mm-hmm.
I used to
Yep.
occasionally play on my phone with a stylus, and that's really easy to misclick.
Yep.
Yeah, I believe it.
The many capturing file analysis on top of deck. But we don't currently have, yes, we don't currently have our encounter suit. Okay.
I don't know how y'all feel about final analysis, but I opened a deck not too long ago at my locals. We did a grab bag sealed night, and me being the huge DT fan, appropriately got a Dark Tidings deck out of the mix. but it was cool because it was an evil twin Dark Tidings deck and has one of the dumbest logos I've ever seen because it has triple final analysis and triple science.
Oh wow.
That's fun.
Is there a data forge in there?
No, I don't think so.
That's too bad.
A shame indeed. All right, quick
What?
draw.
Waiting on a house call, brain.
I know. I think it's got to be Star Alliance, though.
I like it. All right, so I have a number of ways I can go here. I'm
Mm-hmm.
excited about them all.
Yeah, there are things. There are things you could do.
All right, I am going to take the archive. I am going to play Hawkins over there, make you lose 2. I will Embervac on. Let's do it on the. I'll do it on Phyla. And we're going to Reap with Tabor. And I am going to play the Epic Quest. And we're going to fight with Valmart into one of your elusives. How did I do there, JT?
Um, I mean, I like it. Why a fight instead of a reap?
Because he has access denied.
Oh, totally. Makes a lot of sense.
Yes, it does.
Why not draw an extra card?
Gambling Den.
It makes a lot of sense. Makes a
Yeah,
lot
it
of
sure does.
A coin flip here. Nope, lost the coin flip.
Oh,
Okay.
again. Wow.
Oofa doofa.
That's how I roll. Okay, so I don't like this.
Yeah. Yeah, yeah.
I think we can do you.
Tempting
To capture
offer.
first. Just capture there first. You can have that back.
Bilge Warden comes back. Cool. I mean, you know.
Not
Try
that cool.
something
But
here. We're gonna play this red penny on the left here. Then I'm going to bow knithing.
ooh, that's brutal.
I'm gonna use the damage pip to hit that red penny.
Nice.
Okay.
And then the red penny goes back as one of 3 cards in my deck. I know that the other 2 are not shadows. But if I play this ransack here, I'm either going to hit the red penny or I'll draw the red penny.
That's solid logic.
Oof.
Okay.
That is rough.
I'm doing things.
And... oh, yeah. Gotta have other creatures to reap with. Leave that there. What is it still prompting me to? Oh, Fought to the Eye.
All right. That was a big turn.
That was.
JT, what do you think? Should we gamble here?
Yeah, let's gamble here. Let's do it.
All right. I really wish that final analysis were in my hand. It would make this turn a lot easier.
I wasn't gonna say it. I wasn't gonna say it. But I'm with. It was with you at the moment. I was with you in the moment. The gambling den.
Yeah.
Um. Oofa doofa. Interesting. So we know there's a red penny in hand.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. We have 8 cards in hand.
We have 8 in hand.
I still think we go. I still think we go logos here.
Mm-hmm. I agree. Um, I am gonna once again take the archive.
Mm-hmm.
All right, so I will give you an archive with the bilge, and I will play an old egad, and we're gonna start the bouncing death quark.
Nice.
I think I'm gonna hit everything that I can. So we're gonna go Salvador and egad to enrage everything and repeat. We're gonna make sure we get rid of that nexus and the bilge warden and repeat.
Mm-hmm.
Try to maximize our amber here. So I'm gonna hit the Seeker of Truth and Hawkins and repeat one last time. And I think it's probably best to get rid of your elusive if in the very off chance that it matters. And so let's go with Boss Zarek and Tabor. Puts us at 8. And check.
Let's
I like
go
it.
for it.
I like it.
Nope.
Loses 2 again.
Gambling den. Gambling den's been good to us.
It
Just
has
how
been
goes.
after that first one.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Yeah, why not? Ooh. Let's go do that.
Mm-hmm. Red penny comes down. Opportunist to capture another. Cool.
Tempting offer with a capture.
And there we go.
All right. Got 1 in deck.
All right.
Shall
We're gambling.
we gamble? We're gambling. Let's triple check what card it is again. Make sure I pick correctly. All
the
right, we're getting the key here.
yeah, the blue key naturally, though the polite host thing would have been a misclick there. Chose the wrong house. Oh, it has to be Sanctum. It has to be
All right,
Sanctum. Yeah.
let's go Sanctum. First things first, that Gatekeeper is pretty good here. The Vault Keeper would have come in handy a lot the last few turns. And then we're dropping all kinds of knights. And a Light Everlasting for 1 more night.
Is that it?
And we're questing.
Nice.
GG.
Good game.
Nice
GG.
game. Oh man, that quest was so long in the making.
Good game. Well played. Yeah.
Goes back to when JT criticized my forgive or forget choices.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Do you
I
have
s-
some feedback for me?
I say that we got to forgive or forget. We got to do the quest. I knew that was what you were after. I still would have gone a different direction.
What
Yeah.
would you have taken?
I would have taken probably the encounter suit and CXO Tabor.
Hmm.
Either CXO Tabor encounter suit or encounter suit and final analysis. Yeah.
Final analysis could have come in handy, but I think in a deck like this that has just 6 pips,
Mm-hmm.
um, I feel like the Epic Quest was worth 6 or more amber alone, which is better than any 2 other cards I could have gotten.
Yeah. I very rarely have trouble firing the Epic Quest once the final analyses get rolling. Um, but I see your point. It's a good point. It worked out.
Hmm.
Can't fault you. Yeah.
What did you think about constantly clogging my hand to not draw? Like I
um,
drew into the Ambervac the one turn with Phyla and decided not to play it just to keep the one card in deck.
I thought it was good. I thought it was good. Yeah. I don't know if I would have. I don't know if I would have sat on the one card. Um, but in retrospect, I think you made the right call. Yeah. So I'm not sure I
I
would have
think
done it, but I think it was a good call.
I think I wish I would have had the final analysis, and maybe like if I had thought longer about how much capture you had there, Ketzer, that maybe I would have just taken the final analysis. But I thought like in a deck like this with such low expected amber, I wasn't expecting to play the Sanctum creatures until like the very end. Um, so I thought my surest bet for making amber was to ensure that I got the gambling den.
Mm.
Worked out pretty well though. Yeah,
I made a lot there on the gambling den in the end. I think I made 8 amber that game.
Yeah, it
I took
worked.
a
Worked well.
I took a few of those as rough coin flips. There were a couple where my odds were pretty 50-50.
Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
I've been burned by that so many times. Looks like I netted 6 amber, so I made exactly 1 key from the gambling den. I was 4-1, and then 1 key from the epic quest.
the Yeah, it's interesting. Like the staying with that one card in deck. Like if Ketzer, if you got to a point where you could stop our second key and we needed to then flip after staying in that position for a couple turns, it would have been a really tough spot, I think. Um, but I don't know.
That's what I was trying to diminish your board value to get you to a point where you pretty much had to play something.
Yeah,
You
yeah.
did great fighting. I was like, every time you fought, I was like, oh, I wish he wouldn't have fought. We should
Hmm.
have kept one more creature there. So that was definitely the right move to be fighting them down.
Yeah, yeah. Like if we had to budge just a little bit more out of our position and then flip there, we would have been a very different position. Um, very different position.
I
Um,
just think this is kind of like exemplary of what a lot of sealed games tend to look like, where
hmm.
it's vying for the board position back and forth.
Yeah, definitely. Because like you can't rely on just having continuous targeted C or board wipes. You have to use your board to fight when you can. And um, I'm with you. I love those kind of games where you like actually have incentive to fight.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm. Totally. You were spreading out your amber really well. This was actually super cool to see with Fawn of the Eye, and as you were also spreading your upgrades around.
And that's part of like when board wipes, board clears aren't so endemic. You can think a little bit more like that on like how do I spread these threats out? How do I kind of not put all my eggs in one basket kind of thing? Um,
And to what you were saying before, how how I can look at some of these resources as more than just what they provide on play. Like, uh, I can hope for some of these things to stick around for more than a turn or two. It's you think about the game much differently than if there's so much board control where it's like, yeah, what's the play value, and if it's not much, then it's not really that valuable altogether. Yeah, 'cause these were boards that stuck around, and it was mostly boards having to answer boards. I mean, we didn't play our
Mhm.
file analysis. The red alert got a lot of value. That damage pip on it was super
The tip
clutch
on
too. So
Yeah,
good.
yeah.
I don't know if Lady Lorena would have died if not for that damage pip.
No,
I don't know
no.
if that's ever I don't know if that one's ever come up in that specific way like that before.
I love
Um,
seeing damage pips on board control. Yeah, board control cards. Absolutely.
yeah. Well, and that's I guess what I mean by that is like specifically like the encounter suit situation.
Mm-hmm.
Hmm.
Because if it was just a ward that you had put there during your turn by some reason, again, I had like a fight or something.
Yep.
There's other
Right.
ways to pop it down. But when when you're getting a ward after or before every action effect, um, the pip hits different.
Definitely. And a lot of upgrades that game. So like we're all talking about fighting, but there was definitely a lot of upgrade play that game too.
Yeah, and the upgraded particularly on like the ones that modulate your power and armor and stuff. I think those ones had uh, some impact that could be attributed to things.
Yeah,
I
I
didn't get I didn't get to bust out the mantle of the zealot at any point. That's another
would have been good.
clutch upgrade in this deck that can kind of lead you down a Voltron route if things fall the right way.
Hmm. Put that on crewman Yorg and make her elusive, steal every turn. It's pretty solid for sure.
I think this is my own like tunnel visioning, and like wanting to do the cool thing, you know. But I very often put the encounter suit on, say, I mean, even if it's Salvador or one of the Sanctum dorks, but
Mm-hmm.
ideally CX Tabor, and then just trying to replay those final analyses, drawing through the deck, getting big hands, capturing lots of amber there. Um, and
Tabor's
it's
one of those cards that makes a really solid Voltron.
Oh yeah,
Oh yeah, for
love to go
sure.
Voltron on Tabor, or even Eddie, right? Just like
Mm-hmm.
just go really tall on Eddie and let your archives build, and have it sit there
Yeah,
and be annoying.
this is a pretty solid archiving deck too. It gets value from Eddie if you can keep it on the board.
It can get value from Eddie if you keep on the board. It can just toss the Sanctum in there, cycle through with the rest of the Logos and Star Alliance, and if you've thinned your deck out to the point where you can replay, forgive or forget to do some deck shaping, could be a lot of fun. Um, yeah. Yeah, you
Yeah,
can definitely get a
I
lot
think
of draw value out of the Phyllis too.
yeah, yeah, with the deploy. But the phase shift and the Tabor giving you some house cheating to play the Epic Quest off house, if you're planning on
Mm-hmm.
archiving Sanctum the whole game anyway, I think was is really clutch. I mean, it would have taken me essentially two wasted turns to get through the Epic Quest at that point, but I was able to go Star Alliance like you would call JT and tax for three, which actually ended up taking you off the key because of the gamble. And the time is what we needed. Really was like keep you off those keys. So ended up being really big to be able to do that on a Star Alliance turn.
Yeah, arguably, I probably should have made the decision a couple of those times when I had a high tax, but I had the value.
Hmm.
Um,
Just take
I
the
should have,
key.
yeah, just take the key, not gamble
Hmm.
for it.
I like your style, regardless.
Yeah,
and
it's so tempting. It's hard not to.
I'll say too,
Yeah,
that the play with one stood against many with your explore overed dude wearing stunner, like that's super cool. I love that
That is very
interaction.
cool.
Yeah.
I'm
I forgot
disappointed
Lorena
that
was
you weren't
double
allowed to
taunt.
fight three times.
Yeah.
Yeah, I know. It's such a bummer that you couldn't do that because that's a great combo and a great use of the stunner and explore over. I mean, even if you play both of those as an upgrade on something else, it has the same effect. That's pretty awesome.
I bet.
Well, as part of the reason why I played the Expo Rover out like as itself, was so that I could try to get that value off of it and have it as another body rather than just trying to like stack up
Hmm.
more upgrades. Because at that point,
Yeah,
I felt like I needed the board presence more.
Hmm.
yeah. And when the Expo Rover is just a creature, it's pretty unassuming. But if you put that on top
Mhm.
of like something else, now I have to think like, okay, like maybe I should get rid of that, kill two birds with one stone. But when you spread it out like that, I'm probably going to think like, I don't really need to handle that Expo Rover right away.
I bet if one stood against many got printed today, it would ignore taunt. Doesn't endless hordes ignores taunt, right?
I
Sports, I think.
think it does, yeah. And probably, well, Final Refrain. Does Final Refrain
Yes,
even care, or is it?
ignoring taunt. I don't think final refrain ignores taunt. Endless hordes does. Then fight with them one at a time. So final refrain doesn't ask that you fight different creatures.
Okay, so you can just keep fighting the same one.
Yeah. Yeah, so that one doesn't need to worry about taunt so much. Endless hordes and one stood against many each want you to fight different creatures. Yeah, so you could see it.
Hmm.
You could see it wanting to ignore taunt to get those extra fights in.
Yeah, Final Refrain seems to me like an extraordinarily underrated card here by Saz.
Hmm.
I've never seen Final Refrain be anything but a one-sided board wipe.
I'm not
It
sure if I've
is.
seen it in use yet. I think I've
I
seen
mean,
it played in a
it,
game.
it gets crazy because, like, obviously in Grim Reminders you have like a large discard pile, and you could have 10 or 12 creatures in there. And since it's a Brobnar card, a lot of those are going to be Brobnar, and you just drop them out, destroy everything, and then just they go right back where they came from in the discard pile. And so a single action ends up wiping the opponent's entire board usually.
Hmm.
Makes sense. Yeah.
And notable too that you don't play them, right? So you don't get any play triggers on those cards, but you do get destroyed triggers or any effects from fighting. So
Yeah.
Brick Nasty still sees them fight,
Yep.
um, what have you. Yeah.
You're right,
That,
Cloggin. There is the prospect of fighting, which
there
we
is
should all
that.
celebrate.
It is to be celebrated. Cool.
Hmm.
All right. Cool. Well, that was a lot of fun. That was a lot of fun. I'm glad we got to dust off Quack and to see Granite too. Um, I
Yeah,
don't know.
like it's my go-to deck. Anytime I see just a casual game open, I'm like nobody's really gonna get mad about a 60 sass, mass mutations deck. It's kind of interesting to see when you start getting into the game, and then like the sixth, seventh, eighth upgrade drops down, and then you take a second look at the deck, and you're like, oh wow, it really does have a lot of upgrades.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. It
Gambling
doesn't.
then makes things fun.
That's like one of those things. It doesn't pop out at you when you're just reading, glancing over the Archon card. You see the game state, and you're like, "This creature has 7 upgrades on it. What the heck's going on here?" Yeah, I love it.
Very cool. Yeah. Thanks for sharing that one. Good game with that one.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Totes.
The other one that I was thinking about, maybe I should have gone with a spicier deck, but Janessa with transporter platform, matter maker, away team, and 7 upgrades.
Yeah, Janessa looks really great.
Janessa can get to a point where you can just, if you've got the transporter platform, the mass mutation, or the matter maker, and enough just upgrades and a creature, you can just kind of bounce them and get 6 amber a turn and just bounce it back to your hand and kind of hold it for the next turn and just kind of sit
Yeah.
on it. And if it's
Yeah.
the away team, then you've got a little bit less worry kind of just like dropping it and leaving it there because then all of those upgrades get archived. But getting to that game state, getting all of those upgrades in hand, getting the transport platform and the matter maker, that doesn't always happen like that. So
Hmm. I have a deck that I did not talk about during the stream tonight, but it's Abelson of Caring View, which is a double platform Nell deck, and it has a subject Kirby with an amber bonus amber on it, and then there's just 3 upgrades, but they're all an amber pip in Star Alliance, and so with the double platform and Nell and Kirby, you can have these turns. Oh, there's an explorer over too. So you can have these turns where you just draw like 8 or 12 cards, depending on like what you have. It's got an auto encoder to set it up too, so it's pretty nice as far as like taking advantage of the Nell, even though it only has 4 upgrades total.
Hmm. Right on. Yeah, I thought of Abelson as we were talking. Surprised we didn't bring it up, but
Yeah, I mean, it's not. Yeah, it's a bit of an upgrade deck. We talked a bit about like Nell, not a ton, but it's a
It's
pretty
another one of
unique
those ones
one.
that's good. I like the thing I like about Nell is Nell doesn't need the upgrades to do anything. You just
Yeah,
get the value for playing them. Same with the
yeah,
Dark Scar.
yeah. So this is
yeah.
less of like a like, hey, I'm getting value from my upgrades. Mm, I'm not sure how best to phrase that. It's like I'm not getting value from my upgrades doing things. I'm really, this is sort of like a play it and move on with my life situation, as opposed to like now I'm building up a Voltron, or like enhancing my board per se. I'm getting value from the act of playing them as opposed to having them.
Hmm.
I get value from
Yeah.
playing them as opposed to having them. Yeah.
But then like getting the repeated value from transporter platform
Yes.
as well, like definitely adds up.
Yes. Yeah. Totally.
Mm.
All
Cool.
right. Cool, folks. Well,
Very fun, y'all.
getting late.
Thanks so
We'll
much for
spin it on
having me.
down. Yeah.
Yeah.
Um, and thanks very much to the folks in the chat for hanging out with us. We will see you around the lab.
Yeah. Thanks everybody.
Night, peeps.
So, have a great night. Be safe. Keep an eye on the weather.